soon. Waiting for him to do the action. Wow. I know. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Nicole Smith. I am the event and communications coordinator here at Spark. I'm also one of the many entrepreneurs that we have here, so we're very excited to have you here. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Paul Copcutt this evening. Now, Paul is one of the first personal brand experts here in North America, and he is a regular workshop facilitator at different organizations such as Royal Bank Mortgages, TD Bank, Scotiabank, CIBC, and he's also a regular speaker, an invited speaker at professional associations as well as major conferences. Now, he's been featured in all kinds of major magazines such as Forbes, Money, the Wall Street Journal, the Globe and Mail, and the Financial Post. Now, his specialty is to work with business entrepreneurs and business people who are busy and whose income actually depends on them mastering the ability to do this personal branding thing. So please put your hands together for Paul.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay. Welcome. I will just kind of say, first of all, perhaps if we can keep questions to the end, and we'll give the live people a chance to kind of hear the questions, and then hopefully I'll have the answers for you. If not, I promise to find out for you. So I'm going to start off by just sharing with you the story of my accountant that likes to hold piñata barbecues. This particular client worked for one of the big four accounting firms in the US. And when we analyzed her personal brand, one of the things that came up for her personal brand was the words that people use to describe her. So if you're in finance, most people would say that you're accurate, you're analytical, you're honest. But the number one word that people used to describe her, twice as much as any other word, was fun. Which, no disrespect to anybody in finance, but that's kind of like an oxymoron. So when her team was working on a particularly difficult audit, it was a tech company, it was on the West Coast, and this client kept changing deadlines. They were quite aggressive to the team. They were fairly obnoxious. So what they did was she managed to get the team through the whole sort of process. They delivered the audit on time, and she wanted to celebrate in a way that was relevant to her brand, so in a fun way. So she came up with the idea of a piñata barbecue. So she invited each of her team to her house on a Sunday afternoon. They all turned up, and as they turned up, they were given a piñata with the face of the client on it. Now, what they also got was a wiffle bat. So a wiffle bat is a plastic baseball bat with holes drilled through it. So what happened was, as they tried to break open their own piñatas, they couldn't do it on their own because the air passes through the bat, and that just didn't give them the opportunity to break it open. So they had to enroll 2 or 3 of their colleagues to help break open the piñata. So she got the message across around persistence and teamwork. And then inside each piñata was candy, of course, but then she'd also put inside there a personal gift, recognizing a particular skill or strength that team member had used. So they had lots of fun. She took photos. She sent them to me. We laughed about it. And then I said to her, you need to put this on your professional bio. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, just one line right at the bottom, has been known to hold piñata barbecues. And she said, I can't do that. We work for one of the big four accounting firms. We're as conservative as it gets. And we had this back and forth for about 4 weeks. And she finally gave in and she said, okay, I'm going to put it on my bio. So they have the version of their own internal version of LinkedIn. So it's like hundreds or tens of thousands of employees around the world. And they can search by experience and bios. So if they're pitching for new business, they pull together the best team that they've got around the world to pitch for that business. So 2 of her colleagues in the New York office were doing this search one day, and her bio came up, and they were pitching for some new piece of business, tech company, West Coast, so of course she was ideal for it. So they phoned her up and said, we want to put you in the deck and the pitch, but we need you to take that one line out about the piñata barbecues. And I do admire her, because she said, no, it's part of my brand. I'm going to keep it in there. If we get asked, I'll answer the question. So they got called in to pitch for the business because all 4 of the big 4 accounting firms got called in. There's no perceived difference between them. They do a survey every year, and basically all the firms score basically the same on tax and audit and everything else. So she and her 2 colleagues go into this pitch meeting. They sit in front of the CEO of this company. First question he asks is, so tell me about these piñata barbecues. So she's not quite the honest accountant, because she doesn't tell him the face of the client was on it, but she tells him the rest of the story. So second question, if we were to hire you, would you come to our annual kegerator day? And she said, well, kegerator day, what's a kegerator day? So it turns out that this company shut down for a company picnic one day a year. Each department got given a beer keg in the morning, which they had to drink, and then they had to motorize them and race them in the afternoon. Right? So I don't know what the laws are in health and safety, but it doesn't sound very safe to me. So she said, oh yeah, my team would love it. They'd be all over it. He goes, great, you've got the business. That was the end of the meeting. They never had to present. They didn't have to open laptops, do slide decks or anything. The difference was her personal brand and her leadership brand, which ultimately impacted the team brand and underlined the difference of the corporate brand. That's the beauty of personal branding. So my intention today is to try and help you kind of understand the importance of not just knowing your personal brand, but perhaps how you can relate that if you're thinking of starting your own business, or you've already started your own business, or even managing your career as well. And that's the beauty of personal branding, is it's an opportunity and permission to be yourself. So everybody listening to me right now already has a personal brand. The key is understanding what that brand is, and then how do you best manage it to get where you want to get to. So if your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, then hopefully they're saying the right things. But if not, hopefully there's going to be 1 or 2 kind of tips for you and insights as to how you might be able to manage that. So what is personal branding? So personal branding was first written about by Tom Peters in Fast Company magazine, actually all the way back in 1997. And it took about 10 years for it to kind of come to a little bit more of the mainstream, but most people were at the time just kind of embracing it as a way to differentiate themselves in a job search or something like that. It wasn't really embraced as something that you see now, which is everybody's very aware of the term, be it consciously or unconsciously, but then also that people are using it as a way of managing their careers and their businesses and even their lives. And so it's very much more. And there's a few reasons why that's happened. One is this gentleman. This is Dan Pink. He's the former speechwriter for Al Gore in the White House. And he's now an author and a speaker. And he's written a number of books around the kind of reality of what's happened in the world of work over the last 10 to 15 years. So his first book, A Whole New Mind, talks about the fact that if your job can be done faster by a machine or software or cheaper somewhere else in the world, you need to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, that job's not going to exist. And we've kind of seen that kind of really post-2008, particularly in the US, where jobs have not been replaced at the same levels that they were previously because they've found other ways to get them done. More recent book that he brought out was Drive, and this talks about what motivates people. And we've got a lot of young faces in the audience tonight. So if you're under the age of 30, salary and benefits are important. Yeah, they're kind of right up there with oxygen. But they're not the reasons that you're going to be engaged and want to do work. All the surveys that come out, salary and benefits do not come in the top 5, particularly for people under the age of 30. So it's things like, what's the environmental policy of the company? What's my, can I do flex hours? Can I work at home one day a week? Can I, what kind of projects am I going to get involved in? It's all those kind of things that are motivating people. And then one of his more recent books, To Sell is Human, talks about the fact that we're all in some form of sales. 1 in 9 of us in North America are actually in a sales type role, but the rest of us are all in the role of influencing. And one of the best ways to influence people is to tell stories. That's how we grew up. That's how we learned. Our parents would sit and tell us stories, and people engage with stories. So making an emotional connection can help you influence people that much more. So that kind of new world of work, what motivates people, and then the fact that we engage with the emotional connection and stories is kind of one half of why personal branding is kind of coming more to the fore. And then the other is social media. The fact that it's no longer 6 degrees of separation, it's 2 degrees. It's I know somebody who knows the person I need to reach or influence. So that we can all have our own 15 minutes of fame now. We're in control of the media for the first time ever. So that convergence of those two things, that new world of work and the fact that we're in control of the message, is where personal branding is really coming to the fore and enabling us to take much more control, proactive control of our careers and our businesses and the direction of our businesses. So when you're thinking about you, there's kind of 3 key areas that you want to think about. You want to think about what is it that you bring to the table. That's skills, that's attributes, that's differentiation. Who is your target market? Who are the people that you're trying to reach and influence? And that can be a variety of target audiences, and we'll talk about that. And then who's the competition? Who are the other people that are vying for the time and attention of that target market? And what is it you know about them? So if you can identify those 3 key areas and find the differentiation in each area, then that sweet spot right in the middle is the essence of your personal brand. That's the way that you can stand out and be different from everybody else who says they do the same thing as you. So I'm going to touch on a few kind of areas of a process that I take people through, which I call the Rebel Voice formula. And it's kind of 5 steps, which talks about foundation, which is understanding who you are internally from an internal perspective, discovering more about what motivates you, and then pulling that together and working on how do you pull that together into a message that's going to get understood, that's simple and gets people to take action. And then getting that message out there, what are the mediums that make sense for you to do that? And then what's the environment that you control and everything else around that? So the technology that you have, the thought leadership, and even the legacy that you want to leave longer term. So what is a brand? So a brand is nothing more than a unique promise of value. And if you think about the brands that you know and love, the chances are, if I was to pick, say, one of these brands like Disney, what sort of words come to mind? And just shout them out. What words come to mind when you see or hear Disney? Fun, yeah. Family, yeah.
The Disney magic.
The Disney magic, yeah. So fun, family, magic. Some people say customer service, because Disney is very good with their customer service. In fact, they run a whole training program and university around it. So if Disney launches a porn channel tomorrow, it's not going to be very on brand for them, is it? What about Nike? What's Nike's tagline?
Just do it.
Just do it. And if I asked a room of people in Halifax or Vancouver or Hong Kong or London, the chances are they'd say exactly the same thing, or they'd talk about the stars that are related to Nike and what makes Nike different. So you get the idea. That's what brands do for us. We make that connection. So when you're thinking about your own personal brand, you want to think about what I call appointing the VPs of your life. So the VPs are vision, purpose, values, and passions. So the person at the top left, you probably recognize, is Walt Disney. So Walt Disney had a vision. He had this huge vision. People thought he was mad buying all this swampland in Florida. And you think what it is today. He had a vision. A lot of people didn't believe in him, but he believed that vision and got enough people to believe in it as well. So your vision could be a fairly big thing, a fairly substantial thing that you want to see happen. It probably is going to be something you're not going to be able to affect on your own. Now that sounds rather daunting to kind of say, okay, what's your vision? You know, what change you're going to make in the world? But you can think about the opposite to vision, or a contrasting thing to vision, is purpose. So purpose, you can have a little bit more of a personal control of the personal direction. So purpose, the person in the top right there is Andrew Whitty. He used to be the CEO of GlaxoSmithKline, one of the biggest drug companies in the world. When he left the university, he wanted to travel for a year, but he also wanted to volunteer. And what he ended up doing in the 80s, at the height of the AIDS epidemic, he traveled around Africa for 8 months backpacking, and then he went and volunteered in AIDS camps in Africa for 4 months. And it left a very indelible impression on him and an effect on him. So he came back and he actually joined Glaxo as a trainee sales rep. And almost 20 years to the day from when he joined Glaxo, he became the CEO. So he worked his way up, all the way up through the organization. On day one of his term as CEO, he cut the price of all Glaxo's AIDS drugs to the third world, down to cost. So sometimes we may have this idea or something that's impacted us that we want to make a change or a difference, but it might take a while for that to happen. Now, two things that you can have a lot more effect on and are actually having effect on you right now are things like values and passions, which are the other two VPs. So values are your moral compass. They're the things that if you compromise, or if somebody else compromises, you kind of get that gut feeling, you get that pain, or you get anger towards yourself or somebody else because that value has been compromised. So, for example, you and I may have the same value, like teamwork, but my definition of value of teamwork and yours might be completely different. So the nice thing with values is you can actually take the time to define what it means to you and live that value, and then score that value. What I recommend is scoring that value around how are you living that right now. So that value might be, so say my value is fitness and I go to the gym once a quarter, then I'm probably not, I'm going to score that a 1, versus if I run every day, then I might score that an 8 or a 9. So you get the idea. So values are the things you carry with you all the time. And then passions is about, and this is one of the fun aspects I find of working with clients in personal brand, is allowing people to bring their passions to work and have more of their passions be part of who they are and have their colleagues enjoy that as well. So this bottom right-hand corner is actually a very relevant story to locally here to Niagara, because this is a elementary school in the Niagara region. So one of my clients on a workshop in Leadership Niagara was an elementary principal. And one of her key passions, love, is films. So she was like the walking encyclopedia of films. So if you asked any film or you said, oh, there's this kind of story and there was a guy and a woman, she'd have the answer. She just knows films. She'd have an Oscar party every year at home and that kind of thing. So what she does on the first day of September every year is she brings a red carpet to school and rolls it out at the front of the school and has the little chains, the wires to stop people. And what the parents do is they all line up alongside, and any child that's never been in that school before gets the opportunity to walk up that red carpet. So this particular little guy on the right-hand side, it was his first day at school, and he would not go up this red carpet. He was hanging onto his mum's leg, and he was screaming, and he was crying, and he was no way was he coming up that red carpet. And the guy on the left, the younger guy on the left, is just coming into grade 8. So when he joined the school, the principal was not sure if he was going to graduate or end up in juvie. He was a very troubled kid. So they worked with him, she worked with him, and he was going to graduate in grade 8. So he came past and saw this little guy not coming up the red carpet. So he stopped and he bent down and he said, hey, buddy, what's up? And he said, oh, don't we go to the red carpet? Oh, come on, he said, it'll be fun. Just take my hand. Come on, let's walk up. So he took his hand, walked him up the red carpet. And then as they went into school, they just walked down the corridor, and this was, the principal just snapped the photo and sent it to me and said, that's what passions at work mean to me. And simple little things, you can have a lot of fun with it, like piñata barbecues, or, you have a passion for films and you can do that. So values, passions, vision, purpose, those are kind of key foundation pieces for your personal brand. And then you want to think about your uniqueness, your strengths, your attributes, your skills. This is part more about the discovery phase. These are the things that motivate you. These are the things that that kind of get you excited about going to work, that actually get you up on a Monday morning and think, yeah, I've got work happening, because you're using those unique skills and attributes and strengths. Now, it doesn't always happen. A lot of people are disengaged at work, but if you can leverage more of that, then you're heading in the right direction. So we're going to take a very quick coffee break. And the reason for that is I'm going to get you to spend literally 60 seconds. In a moment, Nicole's going to give you the logo of a coffee store. And what I'd like you to do is just organize yourselves into very small groups, 3 or 4 people, be given the logo and come up with the one word that you think describes that coffee store that the rest of the room can guess who it is without knowing the name of the coffee store. Now, if I give you Tim Hortons, or Nicole gives you Tim Hortons, I don't want you hitting Timbits, okay? I want you to think about the emotions you connect with that brand. So it might be a coffee store you love, might be a coffee store you hate, but just one word. So very quickly, I mean literally, because we've got people live and they're not going to be involved in the exercise, we'll give you like 30, 60 seconds, and if you could hand them out, yep, and just organize yourselves into small groups, 3 or 4, and we'll very quickly do it.
Look at this. So easy.
So literally 30 seconds, 60 seconds, one word you want to come up with. I'll give you 30 more seconds. Okay, so I'm going to get everybody just to very quickly put their hands up in the air, please. Everybody put your hands in the air. Just point to the person in your group that's going to be the spokesperson. So. Okay, so let's very quickly go. Rain? One word. So we don't want to know the name of the coffee store, we just want to know the one word.
Trendy.
Trendy. Starbucks. There we go. Trendy Starbucks. Okay, group behind. One word.
Diner.
Diner. Williams? Okay, that was a good guess. I would have said that. Anybody else? Anybody? Diner? No? Coffee time. Somebody just said coffee time. Is that right? There we go. Good guess. Good guess. Okay, at the back there. Neighborhood. Tim Hortons? Tim Hortons. Okay, good. Rick's corner in the corner there.
Venti.
Venti. I think that's cheating. Yeah, I think that's Starbucks. Okay, and the group at the front?
Classic.
Classic.
Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons? Okay, good. So you get the idea. So it's not just about the coffee, it's about the feelings, the emotions, or maybe the product, or the way that product is served that makes the difference. So, quite often with Tim Hortons, people will say Canadian, but if you do that in Alberta, they'll all say Second Cup. They won't say Tim Hortons. So sometimes regionally, brands make a difference. Coffee time, sometimes I take this exercise and extend it out and get people to come up with taglines. And we had a group of accountants once, and they got coffee time, and their tagline was "Where the crack addicts go." So that was... The interesting one with coffee time, the interesting thing with coffee time is sometimes people say smoky. And you think, when was the last time you were allowed to smoke in a coffee store? But they still associate it with smoking. So meet Josie. So obviously it's not Josie. But people know me for driving past 5 Tim Hortons to get to a Starbucks. Now, that's pretty difficult when you live in Hamilton, because that's the home of Tim Hortons. But luckily, we're starting to get some Starbucks coming into the neighborhoods. Now, I only drink black coffee. So it's not about the double tall, non-fat, no-foam lattes or anything else. It's about the feeling that I get when I go into a Starbucks or I get served in a Starbucks. So I was there one day at a Starbucks in Toronto. So as you come through Union Station and go into Royal Bank Plaza, there's a Starbucks on the left-hand side. It's actually one of the busiest Starbucks in North America. So normally between 6 and 9 every Monday to Friday, it's running 4 tills, and it's usually 10 to 20 deep at every till. It is busy, like super busy. So I'm there one day, and it's about 11 o'clock, and I get up to the till pretty quickly, and there's a piece of wire with a pink star on it, and it's kind of bouncing around in the air conditioning. And on it says, Josie did it today. And I'm a sucker for stories and brand and everything. So I said to the barista, I said, okay, you got me. What did Josie do today? And he said, oh, Josie served the most customers between 6 and 9 this morning. I said, well, okay, good for Josie, but that's kind of what she's paid to do. So what's the big deal? And he said, oh, no, sorry, I didn't quite explain. Josie served the most customers this morning whose custom drinks she knew. Now, if you're an aficionado of Starbucks or you know anything about Starbucks, they have 28,000 different drinks combinations at Starbucks. 28,000. So you're in Josie's queue, you're number 8. You lean like this, you give her a little wave, and she grabs a cup, fills in your custom order, puts it on the bar, and your drink is ready by the time you get to the till to pay. So take a guess, and again, just shout out a number. How many custom drinks do you think Josie knows? 300. Anybody else? 1,000. It's like an auction. But 36. 196. Between 300 and 500. Now, the interesting thing is that Josie is not paid any more than Bob at Second Cup, Mary at Tim Hortons, or anybody else in hospitality in downtown Toronto. The difference is that Starbucks allows its employees to be brands within a brand. So you go into a Starbucks and you'll see things like this. You'll see the little chalkboard, and your barista of the day is Minaj, and his favorite drink is London Fog, and he loves the roasted tomato mozzarella. So you start to make a connection, an emotional connection to Starbucks. So, and Starbucks, the number one thing that Starbucks measures as an organization is not sales, and it's not coffees sold or number of beans roasted or anything like that. The number one thing they measure as an organization is employee engagement. Because they know if they have employee engagement at a certain level, and they have at least 2,000 addicts coming through the door every day or every week, that store will be profitable. So you'll sometimes see, this is in Vancouver, and I've seen it, Crossroads, Starbucks on one corner, diagonally across is another Starbucks. The people that go in that Starbucks will not cross the street and go into the other Starbucks. They've built that community. And I was sharing this story a few months ago, and somebody told me this story. She used to work at Starbucks, and there was an old lady in Toronto that used to come into this Starbucks every day. And she lived on her own, and she was in her 80s, and she was frail, and so she was looked after by, or checked in on by social services. And so social services had, you have to have 5 emergency numbers. Well, the number 1 emergency number after her family was the Starbucks. That's how much of a community Starbucks generates. So you get the idea. It's not just about the product or the service. It's about the community, the connection, the emotional connection your brand can make. So when you're thinking about your own personal brand, you want to think about your attributes and your skills and your strengths. So how do others describe you? And if there's one thing you can walk away from this presentation, the one thing I'd recommend you do is go talk to 5 or 10 people that know you. Could be friends and relatives, could be work colleagues, could be student friends, whatever it is, mentors, and just ask them, what 3 words would you use to describe me? And do the coffee exercise. And what you'll start to see is there'll be a pattern. There'll be 1 or 2 words that people start to repeat. And those will be your attributes. Those will be your brand attributes. And those are the things that people want to know about you. Now, the difference is you want to be able to identify both rational or functional attributes and emotional. So functional, rational, if you think back to the accountant story at the beginning, the top words that people used to describe her were accurate, analytical, honest. So those are all functional or rational attributes. Every accountant hopefully is going to say they're accurate, analytical, and honest. So there's no differentiation. It gets you in the game. It's what I call the table stakes, but it doesn't differentiate you. But fun was twice as much for her. Twice as many people said fun as any other word. That's an emotional attribute. You do not need to be fun to be a good accountant. You don't need to be quirky to be a good accountant. You don't need to be caring to be a good accountant. Those are emotional attributes. And that's what you want to try and identify with your own brand, is not just those functional attributes, but what are the emotional ones? Because it would be the emotional attributes will be the reasons why somebody wants to work with you, for you, hire you, buy your product or service, versus someone else who says they do the same thing. So that's the first thing, is around attributes and knowing the difference. And then you want to think about your strengths, your superpowers. What are the things that you do? And in the work that I do with clients one-on-one, this is the area that most clients fall short on. And it isn't because they don't have strengths, it's because they don't leverage them. So when I sit down and we go through feedback from other people and we look at those words and everything else, we also look at strengths. And I say to people, oh, look, 15 people identified X as your top strength. And usually the response from the client is, well, yeah, of course, I do that all the time. Yeah, but you're not leveraging it. You don't appreciate the value it has for others. So your strengths are typically the things that you'll do so naturally and so well, you'll actually almost do them subconsciously, because it's so ingrained and it's part of who you are. And you want to really try and identify those, because those, again, other people place way more value on them than you actually do. And weaknesses, you can work on weaknesses, sure, but you'll never get a weakness beyond a point of mediocrity. It's a lot of time, effort, and resource to make a weakness a strength. And it's so hard to keep it that way, whereas what you can do is leverage 2 or 3 great strengths and have much more impact, and just try and minimize the weakness or find other ways to get the weakness handled. Particularly if you're working in a team or you're a company, say you're the CEO of your own small company, but you can't even balance your own checkbook. Well, you probably shouldn't be spending time on the finance and numbers. That's the kind of thing you should outsource, because it's going to be draining for you to try and do that. Much better to go and find somebody that loves doing numbers and loves filling in Excel spreadsheets than you, because it's not a good use of your unique skills and abilities. So think about your adjectives, pick your top skills and strengths, and as I say, ask 5, 10 people, see what they come up with. Hopefully you'll start to see a pattern. So then you want to think about your target audience and the impact that you have with that target audience. This is still in the discovery phase. These are the things that energize you. And one of the exercises I recommend clients do, particularly clients who are running businesses and have products or services to sell, is every year to sit, at least once a year, to sit down and analyze all the clients that they've had in the last 12 months and which ones they place as the clients they would love to see the phone number come up on the call display, and which are the clients that you don't want to pick the phone up to. And typically you can identify in those clients that you don't want to pick up the phone to certain things about that target audience should not be the kind of target audience you're working with or spending time with or throwing resources at. Because again, it's going to drain you away from serving the people that you should be serving, the people that appreciate what you have and the value you bring. So I always get clients to try and cull out the bottom 10% of their client base every year, so that they're continuing to add more and more people, that like-minded people that appreciate what they value and what they offer. So when you're thinking about your target audience, think about Apple, for example. Apple, yes, they want to sell phones to everybody, but they know who their target audience is. They know the kind of people that are going to embrace their products and be first in the queue. My 19-year-old teenage son is an absolute Apple phone nut. So where was he when Apple 11 Pro came out? He was in the queue at his local mobile store picking up his latest one. I said, you don't need it, your other phone's fine. No, I don't. No. Yeah. Okay, and he's absolutely glued to it. It's part and parcel, and they know that. So I was in the Eaton Center once, and Microsoft was actually launching a brand new product. And the Microsoft store was on the basement floor of the Eaton Center, and I walked past and it was empty. I could have walked in and bought the product. And then I went up 2 floors to the Apple store. I had to book an appointment to get in. And they weren't launching anything. That was just to get in the store. That's, that they know who their target audience is. They appeal to that target audience, and they spend time building that community and tribe and reinforcing that. So you want to think about the same thing about your target audiences. who is the main target audience that you interact with every day. Now, this could be, if you're in a more of a career type of role, this could be an internal audience. This might be a group of people that make decisions around your next promotion or opportunity. So how do you reach those? And of course, nowadays, the people making those kind of decisions, and that might be the same for running your business, the people making decisions about buying a product or service are not necessarily all in the same office or even in the same town or even in the same country. So you have to think about different ways to reach and influence those target people. And identify what's the impact you have for them, what's the difference that you make that makes people coming back to you. And again, on a regular basis, you should be surveying clients or surveying people you serve if you're in a career type role and finding out what is it you do that makes a difference. Why do they enjoy interacting with you or spending time with you or working with you on projects? And you'll start to identify again that uniqueness that you can then take in your messaging and put that out there to appeal to the next group of people you're trying to bring in. So once you've got all that kind of information together, you want to kind of pull that together in what I call a personal brand statement. Some people call an elevator pitch. But basically something that you can start a conversation with. Or it becomes something more than that. So this is about the messaging. This is the place that everybody wants to get to. They don't want to do the step 1 and 2. They want to just get to how do I get my message out there. So your personal brand statement could be used in a number of ways. It could be used on a profile or on your resume, for example. So profiles could be things like a LinkedIn profile. It could be a bio that you've got on your website. But it needs to reflect, again, who are you? What is it you do? Who is it you do it for? Why the hell should they care? You might use it in networking environments, social situations. It's a very common question that people ask, oh, what do you do? Well, rather than just say, oh, I run a small business or I do this, you could try and kick it off with a personal brand statement. Some people use it in interviewing. This might be also very relevant for people who are in small business or startup businesses and you're looking to raise funds. Sometimes if you're going to people who are thinking about investing money in you, they're going to want to know like that. What is it you do? Who do you do it for? What's the difference you make? Why should they be reaching into their checkbook or their back pocket and investing in you if you can't articulate the difference that you make and who you are and what your brand is about? So sort of things that you could say are, through a combination of enthusiasm and strong focus, I energize and align operations teams. This results in acceleration of processes and growth in profits. It's a little bit different than saying you're a marketing manager. Or through my global exposure and experience, I appreciate and champion the need and benefits of diversity to improve the company, business, and community. A little bit different than saying I'm an HR manager. So you want to think about, and this is a good template to kind of follow, I use my, whatever your unique attributes are, and what I'd suggest is a combination of rational and emotional, and top skills or greatest strengths to help whoever your target audience is. And don't be afraid to niche down on a target audience. Don't feel you have to be everything to everyone, because if you try that, you'll be nothing to nobody. So think about a target audience. It doesn't mean you don't do work for the people outside of that target audience, but when you're spending time trying to focus and get messaging through, it's a very noisy world out there. And if you try to be everything to everyone, it's not going to get heard. And then so help your target audience too, and whatever your unique promise of value is, what is the difference you make? And this will help them, and then whatever the key benefit is, or very often, and we don't necessarily like negative marketing messaging, but it works. People typically will come to you because they have a challenge or a problem, not because they're wanting to add to their lives because they're having a fantastic time. Very often it's problem or challenge. So I use my unique attributes, top skills, to help whoever the audience is to have whatever that impact is and help them have benefit or problem solve. So I would say I use my thirst for knowledge and creative brainstorming to help finance industry professionals stand out, be remembered, and always referred. And that will stop them feeling invisible. It's a little bit different than saying, I help you with your personal brand. And the personal brand statement doesn't mean somebody's just going to suddenly go, oh, where have you been all my life? I'm going to hire you. It starts a conversation. So it then says for the other person to say, well, that's interesting. How do you do that? Or what do you mean by that? And then there's a back and forth, and you can start to have that conversation and engage with people. Because it's all about building relationships and trust. People will only buy with you when they know, like, and trust you, most typically. So that's the personal brand statement. So think about the next time that you have an opportunity, and you're going to have one of those when I stop talking, is you're going to have an opportunity to meet other people this evening. Start to think about what is it you might say a little bit differently than maybe when you came in and thought, oh, what am I going to say to people? And networking it's a difficult situation. It's an uncomfortable one. It's not a natural one. But it's interesting how you can find out more about people just by being you. And just adding a little bit more of your personality and who you are into how you explain what you do. And then when you're thinking about expanding this further out, and this is what the accountant did, is thinking about personal brand, is the impact that can have for your leadership brand or your team brand, and then ultimately the company brand. And you think about, go back to the coffee thing, Starbucks approaches customer service and engagement very differently from Tim Hortons. I love the people in my local Tim Hortons if I happen to go in for a coffee, but it's a very different experience. And that's fine because it sits with Hortons brand, which is, blue collar coffee store, versus Starbucks, which is, they've taught us how to spend $5 on a coffee. It's a very different experience. So as Seth Godin says, and I think this is one of the best quotes I think I've come across about what is a brand, is if people care, you've got a brand. People don't care, you don't have a brand. I think it's such a powerful statement. Okay, some quick tools, some quick ideas, some resources. There is a handout as well, so you're welcome. That'll be handed out. You can pick up a copy. And I mentioned some resources and books and assessments as well to kind of get you on your way. So, evaluation. So I talked about values, and one of the assessments that I talked about when I talked about values was not just identifying what your unique values are, but then what does that value mean to you? So actually spending time defining it, and then scoring it on a scale of 1 to 10, and then how, in other words, how are you living that right now? And then what I would suggest with the evaluation is you pick a target for 30 days and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 days to move that evaluation or that value forward. So, for example, I had a few months ago, I wanted to do a little bit more about the environment. So I just consciously picked something each day. Okay, my value is environment, so what am I going to do today that's going to make a difference to the environment? So, it might be I'm not going to drive to the bank, I'm going to walk, or I'm going to get a bike share and go and cycle there. Or, it could be simple, small things, but you're going to feel very much more connected to who you are when you identify your values and try to live more by them. So there's a link on the handout that will take you to that evaluation. Some great books to read. Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Great book around, instead of the how and the what first, start with why you're doing what you're doing. And this goes back to vision and purpose, in particular purpose. And then once you've identified that, okay, now the how and the what follow. Strengths Finder. If you're not able to identify what your top 5 strengths are, this is a great book. In the back of it is a code where you can take an online assessment. And on the handout, I've actually given you a link to another assessment, which is basically the same as Strengths Finder, but it's a free version. But Strengths Finder 2.0 actually identifies your top 5 strengths out of 36 business strengths that they've identified in over 1 million people. Now, the nice thing that you can do with this is, and I provided a link to this, one of the marketing tools that I recommend you do, I hate the resume, by the way, no disrespect to any HR people, but I don't like resumes because I think they're a very flat document and they're not a great way of presenting who you are. So 2 of the things I recommend people pull together is a branded bio. So it's a bio written in the third person, talks about who you are, what you do, the difference you make, your experience. And then the brag sheet is taking your top 5 strengths and creating a story around how you've used that strength in a situation with a measurable result. So it doesn't need to necessarily be work related, but you could talk about, say teamwork is one of your top strengths, then you could tell a story about how you use that strength in a situation with a measurable result. And create a story. People love to read stories. So those two documents, the two documents I recommend people lead with when they're talking about applying for a position, or if it's a company and you're applying for cash from a VC or from a joint venture partner or from somebody investing in you, then using those gives them much more of a flavor for what you're capable of doing, because you're telling stories about what you've already done, versus a resume is just, yeah, I can say anything on a resume. So StrengthsFinder I'd highly recommend. The other one is just very recently, this is Seth Godin's latest book. He's written about 19 books now. I think I've got most of them. When I first read this, when it first came out, I hated it. I didn't get through it, I didn't finish it. And I thought, Seth, this is one of your worst books. And then for some reason, and I find this happens often, some reason I picked it up again, started reading it, and I just happened to be open to what it was saying this time round. Read it in about 4 days. Love it. Really good way of, again, if you're looking at marketing a product or a service, I'd highly recommend this is a great book to help you do that. And if you're looking at building a story brand or building a brand, this guy, Donald Miller, has a fantastic process around the branding process and getting very clear about your message, but also very clear simplifying. So if you're a website selling a product or a service, he has a great free 3-video series on building a website and having one clear message on that website and just repeating that message. It's a really neat series. Highly recommend it. The other one for networking, if you want to read one book on networking, Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. It's great for networking inside an organization. It's great for networking outside an organization. It's all about building relationships, trust, giving, and it will come back to you. But it's a great resource and tool. He has, if you go to conferences or events, he has a whole chapter on being a conference gorilla, and it is priceless. It's worth the price of the book just to get that chapter, because it's start to finish, pre, during, and post-conference, all the steps and things you should think about. It's golden, really golden. And then a more recent one, Ryan Holiday, Perennial Seller. Again, if you're thinking about a product and how do I get it selling for a long period of time, he's all about, it's not all about the first 7 days and launch and that's it, and it's success or failure. He's all about the long tail and spending the time building customer base, building tribe, building trust, and selling for the long term. So great read as well. And then you'd certainly want to think about LinkedIn. A quick show of hands, how many people have a profile on LinkedIn? Almost the whole room. Fantastic. So this is if you don't have your own website and you're not promoting yourself on your own website, be it company or personal website, then this quite often is your first digital impression. Because if you've customized the LinkedIn URL to your name, there's a very good chance if people are Googling your name that it's going to come up on page 1 of Google, because LinkedIn is such a visited site. So that profile, and LinkedIn has changed. It's not just a place to park your resume anymore. It's a place to interact, engage, find business. Around about 25% of my business comes directly from LinkedIn. There's lots of opportunity there. It's really the only business-to-business platform, but I know a lot of people that are doing business-to-consumer business on there as well. It's not restricted to business. It's starting to kind of meld between the two. We're seeing some people are complaining it's more like Facebook, but yeah, okay, there's pluses and minuses. But LinkedIn is still really the only social network now where you can go and play without having to pay. If you're trying to get reach on Facebook, Instagram, you've really got to be paying for boosted posts or something to get any real traction, unless you happen to be Kim Kardashian or something. So that's the system. So very quickly, I've taken you through a few steps of it. And what I would stress is you can no longer let your work speak for itself. It really is up to you to own the definition of who you are, and personal branding allows you to do that. And I'll just kind of give you some quick tips around how you can be a little bit more brandtastic. So goals. I'm a huge believer in goals. I am not the perfect person. I do not check my goals every day. I do not always reset my goals, but I'm a big believer in actually having some goals and having both realistic, but then also things that are going to stretch you a little bit. Certainly work on identifying those key attributes. Always be learning. Don't think that, just because you're going to finish school or you already have finished school, that's it. I would encourage you to be learning all the time. There's a guy I follow called Darren Hardy, and he has the 15-3-1 plan each quarter. So he looks for 15 books so if he wants to learn a particular subject for the next quarter, so say he wants to focus on sales, he'll look for what are the 15 books that he should be delving into on that subject. What are the 3 online courses or resources that he should be looking at? And then what's the one event conference that he should go to add to that skill? You may not hit them all the time, and you may not be big readers, so maybe 15 books sounds daunting, but you don't, I'm always, I think he's the one once said it, or somebody did, get to the 100 pages, and then if you're at 100 pages and you're struggling, then don't feel obliged that you have to finish the book. It's, pick up something else. There's plenty out there. So, but always be learning. Who are you trying to influence? Who are you trying to reach? Who could help you do that? Don't think it's all down to you. And collaboration, finding people with target markets that you're trying to reach, and they already have them. There's lots of ways to work with other people. It doesn't all have to fall on you. Definitely find mentors. And the mentors don't have to be people that you have a physical, personal interaction with. It might be, like I would say Darren Hardy is a mentor of mine because I read his stuff, I watch his daily videos, I kind of follow his stuff. So that to me is a mentor. So, it doesn't have to be, you have to go and have a meeting every 3 weeks with your mentor and reflect what you're doing and report in or anything. Those are great, but consistency. So with a brand, you really want to follow the 3 C's of branding: clarity, consistency, constancy. So you need to be very clear about what you do. So it goes back to that personal brand statement. You need to be consistent with it. So every interaction, every time I come across you, I want to know that that's a good reflection of your brand. Because if it's not, it's going to dilute your brand. And then constancy is constantly working at getting it out there. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to be blasting people or posting on Facebook 100 times a day or anything like that. But you need to be consciously and constantly working at getting that brand out there. And story. People love stories. It's so much more engaging. It makes a point for people way easier than you coming up with some flowery words that people don't understand half the time. So make it a story. So I'm just going to wrap up with a final story. So I have a VP of IT that worked for one of the big Canadian retailers. And she was taking over a division or a department, information management department. They had a really bad reputation, this department. So they'd had a regular turnover of managers. Most leaders didn't last 12 months. They had people trying to leave the department all the time. They were behind on all projects. It was just a nightmare kind of scenario. So she'd done a really good job in her previous role, and sometimes you pay for that in terms that you get tapped on the shoulder to be told to take over a problem area. So she was tapped on the shoulder and said, we want you to be the VP of information management. So she knew that as soon as that was announced, the grapevine was going to start. So I don't know if any of you have been in that situation, but you get brought into a new role, whether that's internally or from outside, and people kind of, straight away, the grapevine starts, well, who is she? I mean, what does she know? Oh, yeah, well, we'll see, we'll get rid of her again, like we did with the last one. That kind of negative, particularly in this group, it was going to go downhill very quickly. So she wanted to nip this in the bud before it even started. So what she did was, one of her unique attributes and passions is creativity. And she loved to she's very crafty, so she makes, she does these elaborate birthday parties for her kids. So like she turned the whole basement into Hogwarts for her son and a zombie operating theatre for her daughter, and it's like really fancy. So she also makes handmade cards. So what she did was she made handmade invitations for every member of the team. And as the announcement came out, everybody got hand-delivered these cards, inviting them to an ice cream social, 2 p.m. Friday afternoon, 14th floor kitchen. So the grapevine started, but it wasn't about who she was as a leader. It was about what's an ice cream social. You know, has anybody ever been to an ice cream social? What's the dress code for an ice cream social? You know, although these are the kind of questions. So as people turned up, she'd got all these different flavors of ice cream and all these different toppings. And what she did was you had to pick a flavor of ice cream that best described your personality and toppings that best talked about the skills and strengths you had. Really didn't matter what people picked. That wasn't the point. The point was people started to talk positively about who they were and what they could bring to the table. And then on Monday morning at 8 a.m., she started sending out the IM from IM. So it was the instant message from information management. It went to every employee across the whole of Canada saying, this is what we have planned this week. These are the reasons why things aren't happening on these projects. This is what we're going to do about it as a team. And you know, this is what's going to be happening going forward. And then she would always put a leadership quote right at the bottom. Within weeks, productivity in this department shot up. Morale went even higher. People started to want to join the division instead of leave. They started to deliver projects on time. It was like completely transformed. And 2 years later, she was tapped on the shoulder again to move to run VP of Marketing. She had no marketing background whatsoever. She's all IT. VP of Marketing to relaunch the retailer's loyalty program, which they hadn't touched in 50 years. So sometimes you might go into a role or even into a business that you think keeps you in a channel or a silo, and all of a sudden an opportunity opens up because of your personal brand, your skills, your attributes, your uniqueness. That's the power of personal branding. So I'll fire it open. I think we'll fire it open for questions, and if anybody has anything, I'm happy to answer.
Now for questions for our live studio audience, actually at home in pajamas and enjoying coffee while doing this. We ask that you please come here and you can be microphoned properly so that these lovely people can hear your question clearly and Paul doesn't have to repeat it consistently. Okay? So, anybody have any questions for our... Didn't he do a great job? Yeah. Okay, questions.
You scared them, guys.
Oh, so you're blaming me.
Yes.
Oh, so I guess I need to work on my personal brand. Anybody?
I've answered them all. See?
You are that good. Okay, so here's one. What about reinventing yourself?
So good question. So people tend to think that once their brand is, you've identified it, that's it, you're stuck with it. Not the case. You don't have to, it's no longer, when I started in the workforce, my dad said, well, get a job in a bank because a job in a bank is for life. Well, we know that's not the case. So, you can absolutely reinvent yourself. You'll have some of the core foundation pieces like values. Most of the time, they're probably not going to change. You might add values, add some, take some away, but quite often they tend to be more firm. But purpose, passions, vision, strengths. Yeah, you can build on different strengths. Yes, you might develop different attributes. So yeah, you can absolutely reinvent yourself. Does that answer that question?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm satisfied anyways. Anybody else? Wow. See, they're mulling everything over. They're going to go home.
Well, that's okay.
And they're going to be like,
in my
oh,
handout,
shoot.
there's, my email. So if, you walk out the door and you suddenly think, oh, I wish I'd asked him that. Costs you an email. I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction. So.
Thank you. Okay. So you touched on this a little bit. When your target audience is sort of scattered because your niche, focus, and service does apply to many different groups of people in a particular, they have a particular same need. So it makes it trickier how to market yourself and have that brand as to who am I talking to. So.
So I would suggest on target audience, sometimes it doesn't necessarily need to be a group of people. The target could be something like geography, or it might be a particular demographic or psychographic, so it might be people under the age of 30. So you might want to do an analysis of your target audience and say, well, here are the people I've worked with already. Can I start to see a pattern that makes sense? Even though it's, so I mean, I focus on the finance industry, but I also work with, one of my clients at the moment is a fire captain in San Francisco. So he has no finance background. So it's more about, you're going to have limited resources and time to get your message out there. So trying to get it out to everybody dilutes that message, and you'll just get tired very quickly. Whereas if you can at least say, well, okay, I do this. So I was sharing before we started, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, somebody found me on LinkedIn by pure chance. Now, I never thought people used LinkedIn like Google, but they do. They will actually just type in keywords. So she typed in brand coach. I came up. She sent me an email and said, I like your profile. I think I need your help. I want to hire you. That was it. So I thought, okay, great. So she was in an industry I have never worked in, not directly anyway. It was in real estate investing, not realtors. I've done some work with realtors, but this was real estate investing. So she has a full-time job. She invests in real estate on the side. She's built a portfolio of 10 houses in the space of 5 years. She has $1 million+ portfolio. And other people have started to ask her, how do you do this? And she wanted to start training and coaching people how to do it. And she needed help. She didn't even have a business card. But I would never have looked for her as a target. Would not have looked at that industry in a month of Sundays. And now probably 50-60% of my business is real estate investors in the space of 2 years, so I think sometimes you'll find that, and sometimes you'll find that one client where you just everything just fell into place. You loved working with them. It was a breeze. It wasn't work. If you can find those clients, those are the ones that you want to go after, because then it doesn't feel like work. I never get up in the morning and think I've got to go to work. I don't go to work. So, okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you for the question. That's good.
Okay.
Are we done?
I think we're done. So let's, okay, I'm just going to do this. So thank you so much, Paul, for everything. I know that I'm going to go home and I'm going to mull this over. And yeah, you'll probably get an email at some point in time. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you to our online audience for watching. Go out and develop that personal brand. And yeah, let's give it up for Paul. Thank you so much.